Well, hi, everybody. I'm Don Stewart, and welcome to our second edition of Breaking News for this Sunday. It is the 27th day of July, 2025. And we're a little late coming back at you today on our second program, simply because literally dozens of stories have come across the wire since the announcement that was made this morning that Israel is going to go in a different direction in Gaza. They're going to have multiple ceasefires that take place. They're going to be dropping food to the people in Gaza. And all in all, they're going to do so much there, create all these roads that are going to bring in more food and that. And yet, nothing from Hamas. They haven't asked anything from them, and Hamas is not giving them anything. So, what in the world are they doing when they get nothing in return? All right, so we've read through so many stories. We're trying to put a bunch of them together and not really fit or worked out because there was way too many of them. But we did find one story that seemed to be the best one that sums everything up, and it comes from the website Virtual Jerusalem. And so let's read the story, and this kind of sums it up the best we could do, best one I found anyway. So this will put it where the action is right now. Here's the headline and the question. Everyone's asking, is Israel caving to pressure in Gaza? Daily ceasefires and chaotic airdrops risk empowering Hamas and undermining Israel's war effort, raising fears that humanitarian gestures are being exploited in place of military victory. Perhaps the tactical pauses and random airdrops are buying time as Israel sets the stage for a decisive victory. But on their face, these tactics seem an embarrassment, undermining sound strategy. And that's the understatement. That's people just got their jaw has dropped. They can't believe Israel is doing this. All right, here's the guts of the story. Israel's announcement of daily quote unquote tactical pauses in fighting 10-hour ceasefires intended to allow humanitarian aid into parts of Gaza has stirred fresh concern across Israeli society and among military analysts. The IDF confirmed on July 27, 2025, and that's today, that these localized halts to combat would occur in three corridors near Gaza City, Deir al-Balah, and al-Mawasi. Officially, the move was presented as a humanitarian coordination mechanism, but the practical and strategic consequences may be far more consequential. At face value, these pauses seem like a concession to mounting international pressure. The Trump administration, various European governments, and the United Nations have all increased calls for greater aid access to Gaza, citing worsening shortages of food and medicine. But critics argue that these recurring ceasefires, coupled with chaotic airdrops of aid, risk transforming Israel from a nation fighting for its survival into an involuntary logistics provider for Hamas controlled territories. The airdrops themselves are riddled with complications. Food packages, as the article makes clear, and we all know this, do not discriminate. They land where they land. In a war torn Gaza, the ones with the guns, not the hungry, determine who receives what. Hamas, with its territorial control and intimidation networks, is better positioned than any international non government organization to seize these supplies. The IDF has acknowledged that distribution does not always go as planned. That's another understatement. While reports have surfaced of injuries caused by misdirected drops and violence breaking out over food. Rather than providing relief, the story goes on, the combination of daily ceasefires and unregulated supply drops risks reinforcing Hamas's grip and undermining the military effort to dismantle it. You can't bomb Hamas by day and feed it by night, a senior security official told Israel Hayom, echoing growing concerns that these measures weaken Israel's deterrence and project inconsistency in the middle of a critical phase of the war. Families of hostages also have criticized the tactical pauses and food drops, saying that Hamas now has no motivation to release the Israeli POWs. And that's true. This is a story that we've read in a couple of different places. The hostage families are beside themselves with what's going on here. Now, on the surface, as the article says, excuse me, these moves may be interpreted as signs of military fatigue or diplomatic retreat. Here comes the but. But there may be another explanation. Some close to the Israeli war cabinet believe this could be a temporary feint, part of a broader strategy aimed at mollifying international criticism while preparing for a decisive blow. These daily tactical pauses may serve up as a smokescreen, behind which Israel reorganizes, regroups, and coordinates final stage offensives in both the northern and southern sections of Gaza. This theory gained weight following the remarks by U.S. President Donald Trump on Friday. He openly stated that Hamas doesn't want a deal and that alternatives must be explored to end the war and return the hostages. Trump's statement was reinforced by Republican senators. Marco Rubio is the Senator, Secretary of Defense. J.D. Vance is vice president, and Ronnie Jackson. Ronnie Jackson, that's the former, yeah, I believe he's a senator now. He's a former physician in the White House. All who publicly voice, that's why we don't use virtual Jerusalem, by the way. They can't get their facts for who's doing what. But anyway, who all publicly voice support for Israel's right to complete its mission without foreign imposed limitations. In this view, the pause in operations is not surrender, but setup. Israel's war cabinet has thus far declined to comment on the possibility of expanded military operations in Rafah or elsewhere. However, Defense Minister Israel Katz said on Sunday that those expecting a permanent ceasefire will be disappointed, hinting that the current period may be a strategic recalibration rather than an endgame. The concern, of course, is that without a bold follow through, these humanitarian gestures will set a dangerous precedent. If Hamas understands that pressure from Washington and the UN can translate into operational pauses, it, of course, will exploit the pattern to regroup, rearm, and prolong the conflict indefinitely. And that's the big worry. Worse, if Israel's allies begin to see appeasement as successful diplomacy, it will embolden their push for a day after plan that leaves Hamas or its proxies in place, undermining everything that the war set out to achieve. Ultimately, this raises the fundamental question: is Israel still fighting to win or merely fighting not to lose? And as the article ends, only time will tell whether the daily ceasefires are a tactical maneuver or the start of a strategic slide. For now, Israelis and their supporters abroad are watching closely, hoping that behind the white flag optics of humanitarianism lies the iron fist of resolve, ready to finish the war on Israel's terms. That was very well said. There's some virtual Jerusalem, even though they got the job description of a few people wrong, like Marco Rubio and J.D. Vance. Anyway, this is we're at a loss for words here. What's going on? Hopefully there's something behind this. Hopefully there is a strategic plan. But at the outset, what we've been reading today in all these articles, what they've been saying, and again, not taking anything from Hamas. Hamas isn't giving anything to them. They're just taking the tactical movements of Israel, taking the ceasefires, taking the food, and to regroup and rearm. And Israel is looks like they're really folding, giving in. There's actually some articles saying, is this the end of the war? Is this it? Is Israel going to capitulate and let Hamas have Gaza? That's the worry here. So we will see what's happening. Again, we don't know. We have to wait and see, but that's why we waited all day to get this to you, because like I said, story after story with this position, that position, and trying to put them all together was rather hectic. But then this virtual Jerusalem one showed up, and I thought it did a pretty good way of explaining what's going on. All right, tomorrow, hopefully we have some more news, hope some better insight. But until then, as always, I'm Don Stewart. Thank you so much for watching. Keep praying for everything. And may the Lord, as always, richly, richly bless.